The courtroom was tense, but not in the way most are. It wasn't fear or grief filling the air, it was disbelief. Judge Judy had barely begun speaking when a sharp, arrogant laugh cut through the silence like a blade. It came from the defendant's chair. A teenage boy, barely 17, leaned back with a grin stretched across his face, his sneakers resting on the floor like he owned the room. He smirked at the judge, shrugged, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Come on, it's not that serious." Gasps rippled through the audience. Even the bailiff turned his head, uncertain whether to intervene. But Judge Judy didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked up from her notes, meeting the boy's eyes with a calm so cold it could freeze the room. "Friends, can you imagine that?" A teenager mocking Judge Judy to her face, interrupting her, laughing at her authority, as if he was bulletproof. Who was this boy? What gave him the nerve to smirk in front of one of the toughest judges in America? She closed the file in front of her, slowly, deliberately, the sound echoing in the silence. "Would you like to repeat that?" she asked, voice even, steady, dangerous. The teen rolled his eyes. "I said it's not that serious. I mean, come on, it's just a fence." "A fence? You act like I burned down the city." The courtroom gasped again. The arrogance in his tone wasn't just disrespectful, it was shocking. People leaned forward, half expecting the gavel to strike in fury. But Judy didn't strike it. She didn't need to. Her stare did the talking. "Tell me," she said softly, "when did you decide rules didn't apply to you?" The teen smirked, tilting his head. "When people stopped making sense." That line hung in the air, cocky, rehearsed, dripping with misplaced confidence. He thought he was clever. He thought he was in control. But little did he know, the moment those words left his mouth, his game was already over. Friends, you won't believe how fast things can turn when arrogance collides with experience. Judy had seen this before, kids who thought sarcasm was armor, that charm could outsmart truth. But this one was different. She sensed something darker hiding beneath that smug grin. She adjusted her glasses, her voice calm but cutting. "Well, today we'll see just how much sense you can handle." The boy leaned back again, flashing a grin to the cameras, like he was on a talk show instead of a courtroom. The audience murmured in disbelief. He looked untouchable, fearless. But behind that grin was a secret, a record Judy had already begun reading before he entered the room. A record that would destroy the illusion he built around himself. By the time this hearing was over, the same boy who laughed at Judge Judy would be the one fighting tears. And what she revealed, no one in that courtroom would ever forget. Judge Judy's courtroom had seen everything, from petty lies to public meltdowns. But what set her apart wasn't just her rulings. It was her presence. There was something about the way she walked in, steady, confident, unbothered by the noise of excuses and drama. When she sat behind that wooden bench, the atmosphere changed. Everyone could feel it. Respect wasn't demanded in her courtroom, it was automatic. For over 2 decades, she had been the embodiment of justice with a human face, tough when necessary, empathetic when truth called for it. She didn't raise her voice unless she wanted to. She didn't lecture unless she knew it would land. And somehow, even her silences spoke louder than most people's words. Her courtroom was a living rhythm, precise, predictable, and fair. The bailiff knew her nods, the producers knew her glances, and even the audience knew when to hold their breath. It was a place where arrogance went to die and truth, raw and unfiltered, came to life. But that day felt different. From the moment the young defendant walked in, there was a tension that didn't belong. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't even pretending to be. He strutted in like it was a performance. His name was Ryan Hale, 17 years old, from an upper-middle-class neighborhood in Los Angeles. His parents owned a chain of car dealerships. He attended a private prep school where money mattered more than manners. He wasn't used to being told no. He was used to being rescued, teachers who looked the other way, friends who laughed at his stunts, and parents who cleaned up his messes. That morning, he was accused of vandalizing his neighbor's property, spray painting her garage with insults after a minor argument over noise. When police arrived, Ryan claimed it was a prank gone wrong, a joke. The problem? There was video evidence, clear, close-up, undeniable. Still, when he took his seat in Judge Judy's courtroom, he didn't look nervous. He looked bored. The bailiff called his name, and Ryan didn't even look up from his phone. He smirked, whispering something to his friend seated behind him. Judy noticed. She always did. "Phone's away," she said firmly, not looking up from her notes. He obeyed, eventually, but not before rolling his eyes. The cameras caught it. The audience noticed it too. There was something in that small gesture, the way he moved like rules were suggestions, that set the tone for what was coming. The plaintiff, Mrs. Adams, was a retired schoolteacher in her late 60s. She stood quietly at her podium, holding printed photos of her defaced garage door, spray-painted in bright red with words no neighbor should ever see. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "He laughed, Your Honor." He laughed while the officers questioned him. "He called me crazy. Said I should learn to take a joke." Judge Judy looked up, her eyes locking on Ryan. "Did you say that?" Ryan shrugged. "I mean, it was just paint. She's acting like I burned her house down." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Mrs. Adams' face fell. Judy, however, remained calm. She turned to her clerk, flipping through the file in front of her. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice quiet but edged with something sharp, "this is not the first time your name has appeared in front of a judge, is it?" Ryan hesitated, then laughed under his breath. "Those were all misunderstandings." Judy raised an eyebrow. The audience leaned forward. Misunderstandings? Even the bailiff's posture shifted, as though sensing something heavier was about to surface. Friends, it was in that moment, that brief flicker of false confidence, that the tone of this case changed. This wasn't going to be another routine scolding. Judy had seen hundreds of teenagers like him, but there was something in his demeanor, something so dismissive that made her curious. Because beneath arrogance there's always a reason, and Judy had made a career out of finding it. As Mrs. Adams described the humiliation of seeing her garage destroyed, Judy watched Ryan closely. He wasn't listening. He was looking at the cameras, smirking every few seconds, almost proud. "Do you find this funny?" Judy asked. Ryan smirked again. "I just think people overreact too much." "Overreact," Judy repeated, setting down her pen. "We'll see about that." Her tone had changed, softer, slower. The audience didn't know it yet, but this was the moment when the game began. Because while Ryan thought he was outsmarting everyone, Judy was already reading the one thing he didn't want her to see: his record. And what was written inside that folder would turn his laughter into silence. The tension in the room thickened with every passing minute. The cameras captured every blink, every smirk, every flicker of arrogance on Ryan's face. Judge Judy had seen many disrespectful defendants before, but something about this boy's attitude was different. Calculated, performative, almost as if he believed he was untouchable. When Mrs. Adams continued her testimony, Ryan leaned against his podium and began mimicking her voice under his breath, earning a stifled laugh from his friends seated in the back row. Judy caught it immediately. "Something funny, Mr. Hale?" she asked without looking up from her notes. Ryan shrugged. "Just wondering how long we're going to pretend this is serious. You think vandalizing private property is a joke?" He smirked again, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "It's paint. She's acting like I committed a crime." Judy looked up, her expression unreadable. "That's because you did." A few chuckles slipped from the audience, but Judy's tone silenced them instantly. She leaned forward. "You seem very comfortable here. Most people sitting where you are feel at least a little nervous. But not you." "I've been in court before," Ryan replied smugly. "I know how this goes." That line made Judy pause. She tapped the folder before her once, twice, as if confirming something in her mind. "Yes," she said quietly. "You have." The air changed. It wasn't obvious to Ryan yet, but everyone else in the room felt it. Judy had just stepped onto a different path, one that would lead straight into the truth he didn't want to face. "Tell me," she said after a beat, "what exactly do you think happens in this courtroom?" Ryan leaned forward, still smiling. "You ask questions, I answer them, you give a lecture, and we all go home." "I've seen the show." Gasps echoed. Judy didn't flinch. She simply nodded, folding her hands together on the bench. "I see. So this is entertainment for you." "Well," he said, shrugging, "it's not like real court. No offense." That word, offense, was the spark. Judy's lips pressed together, her calm composure tightening like a drawn bow. "No offense taken," she said smoothly. "You're right. This isn't a real courtroom." She paused just long enough for the boy's grin to widen. "It's televised. Which means millions of people will now get to see what happens when a 17-year-old believes he's smarter than the law." His grin faltered for a split second, just long enough for the audience to notice. Mrs. Adams spoke up again, her voice trembling but firm. "He didn't just spray paint my garage, Your Honor. He came back the next morning and laughed about it. I asked him to apologize. He said, 'Pay me first.'" The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Ryan laughed again, trying to mask the heat crawling up his neck. "She's exaggerating. I was joking." "Joking," Judy repeated. "You enjoy that word, don't you?" He nodded, smug again. Yeah, I guess I do. Then let me ask you a serious question, Judy said. Do you know how many people I've seen use jokes as excuses for cruelty? Ryan rolled his eyes. Here comes the speech. The entire courtroom froze. Even his friend stopped laughing. Judy's stare locked onto him like a laser. You think this is a speech? No, Mr. Hale. This is a mirror. He blinked, unsure how to respond. You look into this courtroom, she continued, and all you see is someone trying to control you. But what you're really seeing is yourself, the version you've been hiding from everyone else. Her tone wasn't loud, but it cut deeper than any shout could. The audience was silent. The cameras zoomed in on Ryan's face as his confidence started to tremble under the weight of her words. Let's talk about this not serious case, Judy said, flipping open the folder again. You claimed this was a one-time mistake, correct? Yeah. Except it isn't, is it? Ryan's smirk returned, but it was thinner now. Whatever you think you know, it's out of context. Out of context, Judy echoed. Interesting. I see here 3 prior incidents of property damage. School lockers, a teacher's car, and one involving spray paint again. Would you like to tell me how all of those were also jokes? Ryan's jaw tightened. That stuff was expunged. It's gone. Nothing is gone, Judy said softly. Not when it comes to character. The audience whispered again, tension building like electricity. Ryan's face shifted from mockery to discomfort. His hands fidgeted against the podium. You said earlier that I don't make sense, Judy went on, her tone almost conversational. Maybe you're right. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you that the law applies equally to everyone, even those whose parents can afford to clean up their mistakes. That line hit hard. The audience gasped. Ryan's eyes widened, and for the first time there was no smirk. How do you know about my parents? He asked. Judy didn't answer. She just looked down at the folder again, tracing a finger along the edge of the papers. You're not the first young man I've seen raised to believe money erases consequences. But life has a way of collecting its debts, even when courts don't. Ryan tried to laugh, but it cracked halfway. This is ridiculous. Judy looked up, calm as ever. You're right. It is ridiculous. But not for the reason you think. There was something in her eyes, not anger but a quiet understanding, almost pity. She could see it now, the cracks beneath the arrogance, the fear behind the smirk. And whatever was written inside that folder, it wasn't just a list of teenage mistakes. It was a pattern, one that had been ignored for too long. She closed the file slowly. Mr. Hale, I suggest you take a breath. Because when I open this again, the conversation will change. The courtroom held its breath. Ryan stared at her, his mouth tightening into a forced grin. You're bluffing. Judy smiled faintly. You'll find out soon enough. And in that moment, everyone knew, something big was coming. Judy's tone, her posture, the way her eyes lingered on the file, it all hinted that the secret she was about to reveal wouldn't just humiliate him. It would expose him. Judge Judy's fingers rested on the file for a long moment. The silence in the courtroom felt heavy, too heavy. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, glancing back at his friend as if looking for a smirk of reassurance. But even his friend looked uneasy now. Judy opened the folder. Let's start with what you call misunderstandings, she said calmly. You've had 3 previous encounters with disciplinary boards, all for destruction of property. Ryan rolled his eyes. Those were school things. You're really bringing that up? Oh, I'm just getting started, Judy replied, her tone polite, almost pleasant. At age 15, you were suspended for slashing a classmate's bicycle tires because he looked at you wrong. A month later, you were caught breaking into a locker room with friends to graffiti the walls. He scoffed, trying to regain control. Come on, those are just dumb kid things. Judy didn't look up. Then at 16 you were charged with vandalism again, this time at a public park. Your parents paid for the damages and the case was dropped. Convenient. Her voice didn't rise, but the edge beneath it was unmistakable. Ryan swallowed hard. That's old stuff. Everyone moves on. Everyone except the people you've hurt, Judy said, her gaze lifting now. Your neighbor, your teachers, your classmates, they all moved on without an apology from you. You never once accepted responsibility, did you? He shrugged, his bravado slipping. Why should I? They were all overreacting. The audience stirred. Judy's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. She flipped another page. Age 16, she continued. Incident involving a staff member. Property destruction. Disorderly conduct. And verbal abuse. Ryan's jaw tightened. That's not how it happened. Oh. Judy asked, glancing down again. Then you can correct me. Because according to this report, you threatened your school counselor after she reported your behavior to your parents. You told her, and I quote, "People like you should learn to keep quiet before they lose their jobs." The air in the room thinned. Even the audience stopped breathing for a second. Ryan blinked rapidly, trying to play it off, but his voice was thinner now. "She twisted my words. I didn't mean it like that." Judy didn't respond. She simply turned the page. "Now," she said, "this next part is where things get interesting." Ryan's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "This record includes sealed documents, ones that wouldn't normally appear in a small claims case. But it seems someone made a note in your file because your parents' interventions have been consistent. They've paid fines, settled quietly, and in some cases, pressured institutions to remove disciplinary actions entirely." He opened his mouth but no sound came out. Judy looked him straight in the eyes. "Tell me, Mr. Hale. What happens to a boy who never faces the consequences of his actions? What does he grow into?" Ryan looked down at the table. "I'm not." But she interrupted, her voice now cutting through the silence like steel. "He grows into a man who mistakes privilege for power and arrogance for intelligence." The courtroom was frozen. The smirk that had carried Ryan this far was gone. His face was pale now, his jaw tight. Judy turned one more page. "And now we come to the most recent incident. I debated whether to read this aloud, but since you seem to believe your record is a joke, let's see if this makes you laugh." Ryan's breathing quickened. "You can't read that." "Oh, I can," Judy said firmly. "It's part of the public record once you step into this courtroom. And I think the people here, and the millions watching, deserve to understand exactly who you are when the cameras aren't around." She began reading slowly, her voice calm, deliberate. "Incident dated 8 months ago. Involved domestic disturbance. Victim, female guardian." The courtroom gasped. Judy didn't stop. "The report states that an argument escalated when you pushed your mother during a confrontation about school. Police were called by a neighbor after hearing shouting. Your mother declined to press charges, likely out of fear of what it would do to your record." Ryan's hands clenched the podium. His lips trembled. That's not what it sounds like." Judy's gaze didn't waver. "You were given a restraining order for 1 week, which was later lifted at your parents' request. Do you deny that?" He stared at the ground, silent. "Do you deny it?" His voice cracked. "No." And that was it, the collapse. The audience sat in stunned silence. The same teenager who had entered this courtroom laughing and mocking was now small, trembling, hollow. Judy closed the file. "So you see, Mr. Hale, this isn't about paint on a garage. It's about a pattern, one that began years ago and has only grown because no one ever made you face it." He finally looked up, eyes glistening. "You don't know what it's like," he said softly. "Everyone expects me to be perfect. My parents, they only care about how I look. If I mess up, it's like I don't exist. His voice broke completely. Judy's expression softened, but only slightly. "Pain doesn't give you the right to inflict pain. You're not the only one who's been hurt, but you might be one of the few who still has a chance to change before it's too late." Ryan wiped his eyes, but the tears kept coming. The cameras caught every drop, not for humiliation but for truth. It was the moment his mask shattered completely. "I didn't mean to hurt her," he whispered. Judy nodded slowly. "Maybe not. But you did. And that's why you're here, not to be punished but to be reminded that actions, once taken, can't be erased by excuses." The courtroom stayed silent for several seconds after she finished. It wasn't judgment anymore, it was reflection. Everyone felt it. The sharp line between arrogance and pain had blurred, and for the first time, people saw the boy behind the defiance. And friends, if you had been there, you'd have felt it too. That quiet, unforgettable moment when truth stripped away every layer of pride and left only honesty behind. The courtroom that had once echoed with laughter and arrogance now held only silence. Ryan stood trembling, his hands still gripping the podium as if letting go would make him fall apart completely. His eyes were red, unfocused, searching for a way out that didn't exist. Judge Judy watched him, not with anger, but with a piercing calm that cut through the noise of excuses and pride. She had seen hundreds of defendants crumble under truth, but this was different. This was a boy unraveling, piece by piece before her eyes. Ryan took a shallow breath, his voice barely a whisper. "You don't get it. Everyone thinks I'm just some spoiled kid who doesn't care about anything. But you don't know what it's like when you have to be perfect every day of your life." Judy said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence gave him permission to continue. "My dad, he started, his voice cracking. He doesn't talk to me unless I win something. If I mess up, he ignores me for days. Mom says it's just how he motivates me, but it's not. It's like I'm invisible unless I'm doing something worth showing off. The audience shifted. The smug, defiant teen they'd seen minutes ago was gone. In his place stood a boy stripped of defenses, suffocating under years of pressure and neglect. I lied because it worked, Ryan continued, his words tumbling out between ragged breaths. Every time I did something wrong, they'd cover it up. They'd call it boys being boys. I thought that meant I could do anything and still be okay. I thought it meant rules didn't apply to me. But now, he stopped, shaking his head. Now I don't even know who I am when I'm not pretending. The room was so quiet, you could hear the faint hum of the overhead lights. Judy leaned forward slightly, her expression softer than anyone had seen all day. Mr. Hale, pain has a way of teaching us the wrong lessons when no one stops it. You learned to lie because it kept you safe. But it also kept you small. Every time you ran from responsibility, you built another wall around yourself, and now you're trapped inside it. Ryan's chin trembled. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just didn't want to feel like I was losing again. You didn't just hurt people, Judy said quietly. You humiliated them. You made them feel powerless because that's how you felt at home. Her words struck something deep. He covered his face with both hands, his shoulders shaking as he fought back sobs. I hate it, he whispered. I hate myself for it. Judy's voice softened even more, but the weight of it carried through the room. Good. Hate the actions, not the person. That's how change begins. You don't fix your mistakes by running from them, you fix them by facing what they cost. For the first time, Ryan looked up. His face was streaked with tears, but behind them there was something new, understanding. My mom cried that night, he said hoarsely. After I pushed her. I told myself it was her fault. I told myself she deserved it for yelling. But she didn't. She was scared. I saw it in her eyes and I still walked away. Judy nodded slowly. That's the memory you'll carry with you until you make it right. And you will, not because the law demands it, but because your soul does. The audience sat transfixed. This wasn't a judge scolding a defendant anymore. It was a woman guiding a boy through the wreckage of his own making. Listen to me carefully, Judy continued. You're 17. You have time to change. Most people don't get that chance after this long a pattern. You can't erase what's been done, but you can choose to become someone your mother isn't afraid of. Someone who doesn't need to lie to feel seen. Ryan nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. His voice came out broken but sincere. I don't want to be this person anymore. Then stop being him, Judy said simply. Start by doing something you've never done before. Take responsibility. Apologize. Mean it. And when the world gives you another chance, don't treat it like a favor. Treat it like a miracle. Her words hung in the air, powerful and still. The courtroom that had started as a spectacle had transformed into a place of redemption. The cameras, the lights, even the whispers seemed to fade into the background as everyone absorbed what they had just witnessed. A proud boy finally learning humility in the most public way possible. Ryan bowed his head, whispering, I'm sorry. Mrs. Adams' eyes filled with tears. She nodded silently, accepting the apology that had taken an entire lifetime for him to learn how to give. And for the first time all day, Judge Judy leaned back in her chair and exhaled. The fight was over. But the lesson, the one that would follow Ryan long after the cameras stopped rolling, had only just begun. Judge Judy sat back, her eyes steady, the weight of the courtroom pressing into stillness. The boy who had walked in smirking was gone. What sat before her now was someone quieter, smaller, humbled by the truth. She adjusted her glasses, glanced at the papers one last time and then closed the file. Mr. Hale, she said, her tone calm but commanding, you came in here believing you could outsmart everyone, that this was just another stage for your performance. But what you learned today is that arrogance collapses when faced with truth. Ryan didn't move. His gaze stayed fixed on the floor, his hands folded tightly together. Judy continued. You owe restitution to Mrs. Adams in the amount of $3,000 for property damage and emotional distress. You will pay that in full. But that's not your real punishment. He looked up, startled. You're also going to enroll in a mentorship program for at-risk youth, boys your age who made mistakes but chose to change. You'll spend every weekend for the next 6 months helping others understand what you just learned here. That responsibility is not a punishment, it's a gift. Ryan nodded slowly. Yes, Your Honor. Judy leaned forward, her voice soft but powerful. Humility isn't weakness. Accountability doesn't destroy you, it rebuilds you. You have an opportunity most people never get, the chance to start over before life decides for you. Tears welled in his eyes again. I won't waste it. I hope not, Judy replied. Because this file, this story, doesn't have to define you. What you do after you leave this courtroom will. She raised her gavel and struck it once. The sound echoed like finality, not just the end of a case but the beginning of a reckoning. Judgment for the plaintiff, she declared. And just like that, the boy who once laughed at justice finally understood what it meant. And so, friends, the gavel fell, but the real impact wasn't on the courtroom, it was on every person watching. Ryan's story was more than a lesson in law. It was a reminder that arrogance often hides pain, and that truth, though it hurts, has the power to heal what lies beneath. Judge Judy didn't just expose a spoiled teen, she gave a broken boy a second chance. Because sometimes, the harshest justice is also the deepest act of mercy. Friends, what would you have done in Judy's place? Would you have shown the same restraint, the same strength? Tell us in the comments. And if this story moved you, share it, because someone out there might need this reminder today. Stay with us because next time Judy faced someone even colder, and the verdict shocked everyone.